Okay, test number one, 100 lit. You have proper names: Congress, Republicans, Democrats, Adam Smith, Ricardo, and America. Make sure that you've accessed the speed building prior to this. And here we go. This is 100 lit for 5 minutes. The talks in the Congress will be about new trade agreements because the president says, and a lot of both Republicans and Democrats say, that the gateway to economic health is trade. That may be. The theory is the more you trade, the better off you are. If you study the doctrine of comparative advantage from the great economic thinkers going back to Adam Smith and Ricardo and others, the presumption was that every part of the world would do what it could do best and trade back and forth. This was the doctrine of comparative advantage. Of course, what they were talking about was trade from nation to nation, because there were no corporations at the advent of that kind of economic theory. But notwithstanding that, the provision still exists, I suppose, in the minds of some that the route to economic health is through trade. They believe that discussion should not be about what kind of trade. Instead, the question should be, how much trade? Some of us are concerned about our situation with trade. It is not because we believe we should not have aggressive trade practices or that we should not find ways to market our goods overseas in foreign markets that might need those goods. It is not because we believe that American consumers should not be able to take advantage of goods produced elsewhere that they may want. Instead, we are concerned because we see a pattern of trade in this country that is not fair to this country, and that in the long term will weaken and harm our production and manufacturing base in America. The production base is the center pole of a strong economy. If you weaken your production base, you weaken the sector that provides the good jobs that pay well and have good benefits. We have been led into thinking, I expect by some, that a measure of economic health in America is not what you produce, but what you consume. Think to yourself, what are the economic indications that are used every month to evaluate how healthy America is? It is what we consume every month. Were sales up or down? That's the basis by which we evaluate if America is doing very well. Yet there is very little discussion about what we produce. I want to hold up a chart that describes the aggregate trade deficits in recent years. Even though we have been negotiating trade agreements, and we have done a number of these trade agreements under the procedure called fast track, which I will describe in a moment. It is very hard to determine that we are moving in the right direction. This particular chart demonstrates that for 21 straight years, we have run merchandise trade deficits in this country. And in more recent years, We have had the largest drops in our history. Last year, the year before that, and really this year, we will once again see the largest, and then you have your 100 number 2, Mr. President, Drug-Free Communities Act, America, THC, LSD, and US. This is 100 number 2 lit for 5 minutes. Mr. President, last week I introduced the Drug-Free Communities Act of 1997. This bill, which is strongly supported by members from both sides of the aisle, rechannels some of the drug control funds into local anti-drug efforts that are already reducing teenage drug use in our towns. We must act now on this issue because teenage drug abuse is one of the worst problems in America today. Drug abuse encourages crime and gang violence, as well as higher rates of teenage pregnancy and other social problems. Many of our schools are under siege from the onslaught of drugs. What's more, teenage drug abuse is getting worse. After more than a decade of substantial progress in combating the problem, the trends have reversed since 1991. Marijuana use alone has tripled among 8th graders and more than doubled among 10th and 12th graders. The use has increased so much in this period that 1 in 20 of our high school seniors uses marijuana daily. And the marijuana of today, because of the THC content, can be 15 times stronger than was the marijuana of the 1970s. Cocaine, crack cocaine, and heroin are more common among teens. The use of LSD has never been more. These nationwide statistics are extremely troubling. But the problems of teen drug abuse are experienced most vividly in each of our towns and communities. Our sons and daughters face this threat every day in school and on the playground. We need to target our drug reduction efforts to help these teenagers in their own communities. That is why we are introducing the Drug-Free Communities Act of 1997. With scarce or no federal funds, many local anti-drug groups are now helping some youths in their areas. This bill targets aid to these groups so that they can reach out to and help more youths. In order to receive federal support, an area must first show a comprehensive long-term promise of stopping teenage drug abuse. This promise must include a focused mission, the use of strategies to reduce drug abuse, and the involvement of all parts of the area, including parents, youth, businesses, media, schools, law enforcement, church leaders, and others. And a community must show that its anti-drug effort is an ongoing one that has local support and is self-sustaining. I also support the Drug-Free Communities Act because it is fiscally sound. It does not increase federal spending or the debt. It just moves the existing funds from the $16 billion federal drug control budget. What's more, the bill calls for a fiscal commitment from the areas involved. Under the bill, the U.S. will not simply grant money to local communities that meet the criteria I just gave. Each of the areas must match the government's funds with funds of their own up to a cap of $100,000. These matching grants will force the committees to demonstrate an even, and we'll get ready for your 80s. 80 number 1, you have PP and Nicole. This is going to be 80 test number 1 lit for 5 minutes. It's a long answer. The question is, was the sexual abuse reported accurately? This is long answer, 80 word per minute test number 1 for 5 minutes. And it continues, okay? Whatever you hear on this, you'll hear on the second. I think so. 99.9% of the time, I ask children if they know the difference between a truth and a lie. And I use examples that are age appropriate. For instance, her age would be colors, certain colors that she knows. I might ask if my skirt is black, and I said that my skirt is red. Is that a trick or a lie? If she said yes, then she would be able to ascertain the difference between the truth and a lie. It certainly appeared to me that what she was stating was the truth. And I did not get the impression that there was coaching going on in this case. I have had cases where I do think that there was coaching. In this case, I did not. A few areas that I look into might be to ask them if someone's touched them in their private parts, and they say yes. And that's all they say. Or they might just say yes. He or she, whoever the alleged perpetrator was, touched me on my pee-pee or touched me in the way I didn't like, and that's all. If they spontaneously come up with the information to add on to what they are starting to describe, that's when I feel that there was coaching going on, or when a young child or adolescent is not able to give details, they're not able to say what it felt like or how they felt. I've had cases where the information that was given by the parents is totally out of line in terms of what would be realistic about an occurrence. For instance, maybe stating that she or he thought there was molesting going on during the time that the father in this One case was taking the child on a jogging race we have in town. So, in other words, unrealistic kinds of situations that come from the parents in conjunction with the child not being able to give any details. For Nicole, it appeared that after she gained rapport and felt trust, she continued to give information and details, some which were just spontaneous comments on her part. And I would just ask specific questions like, how did that make you feel? Or did anything else happen? And she would add more and more information. So she didn't continue to just, and on your 80 number 2 lit, all there is Nicole. Capitalize it, okay? This is going to be 80 lit number 2 continues for 5 minutes. So, in that sense, I just felt to me that she is describing what in her mind she perceived happened. I also talked to another area, and evaluation. I want to mention that I wanted to do an evaluation of the alleged perpetrator, the mother's present husband, the mother, and Nicole, because the ideal situation is to do evaluations of everyone connected, and the mother said that she wouldn't mind that. But of course, that has not worked out. The only information the mother gave were some comments made by Nicole. The next interrogation would be to look at, are there other explanations why a child has come up with such information or exhibit certain behavioral problems? Like, for instance, if there's a problem with excessive masturbation, is the child doing that because they have a vaginal infection? Are they making statements or having nightmares because their parents are getting divorced? So I try to rule out whatever other behavioral problems could be causing the problems. In this case, it seemed to me that there was not any problem with excessive masturbation or bedwetting in the first place. The significance of nightmares in some cases can be, and I repeat, it can be a red flag for sexual abuse. Certainly, if children are watching monster movies every day, we're going to probably have a nightmare about it. The research has indicated that young children, especially in Nicole's age group, may dream about monsters, and the monster can be, maybe in their mind, be thought of as who the perpetrator is. Again, that's just in some cases. But it's all over in the literature. I got a definite impression that would indicate that what Nicole perceived as having happened was perpetrated by her father. I usually ask 2 or 3 times during the interviews to clarify who this alleged perpetrator is, and she never did sway from stating the same person being her dad. She never did say it was another person in these interviews. On the last page of my report, I state my opinion that it is likely that Nicole is accurate about what has happened. Then I state, I cannot be certain as to what exactly happened. What I am saying is, it seemed that from her perception, she is describing what happened, but that I'm not in a position, because in this type of situation, okay, those are hard. I will send out a Blackboard notice announcement as to when your tests are going to be for your finals and when everything's due, okay? Have a great day, you all.